West Point, a name that carries weight. Steeped in tradition, it's the oldest military academy in the United States, producing some of the country's most respected military leaders. A place where discipline, honor, and strength are drilled into every cadet. But beneath that legacy of pride and patriotism lies something else. Something whispered about in hushed tones, something unexplainable. In the fall of 1972, a young plebe named Jim O'Connor arrived at West Point. He was like any other first-year cadet, eager to prove himself, nervous about the pressure, determined to make it through. He was assigned to a room in the North Barracks, room 4714, a room that at first glance seemed no different from any other. Small, cold, strictly functional. Just a place to rest, study, and prepare for the next grueling day. But it didn't take long before Jim realized something was off. It started subtly. At night, after lights out, he'd hear strange sounds. The distant creak of floorboards, soft footsteps in the hallway when no one should have been there. Sometimes the faucet would turn on by itself, toilet paper unrolled without explanation. At first he thought it was just the stress. He was tired, overworked, barely getting 4 hours of sleep a night. Maybe he was imagining things. But deep down, something felt wrong. One night, as Jim lay in bed trying to drift off, a chill swept through the room. Not just a cold draft, this was bone deep, the kind of cold that sinks into your skin. He pulled his blanket up, but it didn't help. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady, getting closer. He opened his eyes and froze. At the foot of his bed stood a man, or what looked like a man. He was dressed in an old military uniform, Civil War era, from the 1800s. Dark blue coat, gold buttons, a saber on his side, and a musket resting in his hand. But it wasn't his clothes that terrified Jim. It was his eyes, glowing white. No pupils, no irises, just two brilliant orbs of light, staring straight at him. Jim tried to sit up, to scream, but he couldn't move. A crushing pressure pinned him to the bed. It felt like a massive weight pressing down on his chest, stealing the air from his lungs. He wasn't just scared, he was helpless. The figure said nothing. It didn't blink. It just stood there, perfectly still, watching him. Seconds passed, then minutes. Time seemed to stretch. And then, without warning, it vanished. The pressure lifted. The cold faded. Jim gasped for breath, sat up, heart pounding. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. He told himself it was a dream. Sleep paralysis, maybe. A trick of the mind. He tried to ignore it, to push it down and move on. But it happened again, and again. The same figure, the same eyes, the same unbearable pressure. Then his roommate John Feely started having similar experiences. John would wake in the middle of the night, unable to move. A dark shape looming over him, pressing down on his chest. And when he could finally move, the room would be ice cold, freezing, even though the radiator was on full blast. The two cadets didn't want to talk about it. Not officially. They feared being labeled unstable, or worse, weak. But late at night, they'd whisper about it. The pusher, they called it. Whatever it wasn't a dream. It was something real. Word started spreading among the other cadets. The atmosphere in room 4714 was different, unsettling. People started avoiding it. Some claimed they felt watched while walking past the door. Others heard whispers inside, even when it was empty. Eventually, West Point officials got wind of the situation. Whether out of curiosity or concern, they brought in a well-known psychic, Jean Dixon. She was famous for predicting President Kennedy's assassination, and she had a reputation for connecting with the supernatural. Dixon entered room 4714 alone. She stood in silence for a moment, then began to speak softly, as if addressing someone unseen. But what happened next shocked everyone present. Suddenly, Dixon was thrown backward, lifted off her feet by an invisible force, and hurled out of the room. She landed hard, shaken and terrified. She refused to go back in. She told them the entity was angry, ancient, and deeply connected to the Academy's past, and that it would not leave. After that, Room 4714 was permanently changed. It was no longer used for sleeping. The academy converted it into a quiet study space. No beds. No overnight cadets. But even then, the stories didn't stop. Years later, the events in room 4714 were analyzed by Lieutenant Colonel Timothy O'Neill. A professor and psychologist, he believed the experiences might have been a case of hypnagogic hallucination, a phenomenon that occurs between waking and sleeping, when the brain is half dreaming and half aware. A scientific explanation, perhaps. One that fits the bill for skeptics, but not for Jim O'Connor. Even decades later, Jim remembers every detail. The cold, the pressure, the eyes. He's a rational man, not someone prone to superstition. But what happened in that room was unlike anything he's ever experienced, and he's never been able to forget it. He doesn't claim to believe in ghosts, but he's not sure what else to call it. The pusher wasn't just a nightmare, it was something real, something ancient. Something that walked the halls of West Point long before he ever got there, and maybe still does. Room 4714 remains one of West Point's most mysterious legends. A place where logic and discipline collided with the unexplainable, and where one young cadet came face to face with something that defied everything he believed. Something that didn't just haunt the room, it held him down and refused to let go. The mountains of Sikkim are breathtaking, majestic, towering and strangely silent, but hidden within that stillness, beyond the beauty of the eastern Himalayas and near the icy Nathula Pass, there's a story passed down among soldiers. Not from official documents or strategy briefings, but through whispers around campfires, in the cracks of radio static, and in the quiet prayers of men facing death. It's the story of Baba Harbhajan Singh, a soldier who never truly left the battlefield. Harbhajan Singh was born on August 30th, 1946, in Punjab. He was just 20 years old when he joined the Indian Army and was posted to the 23rd Punjab Regiment. Young, disciplined, and devoted to his duty, he was assigned to the high-altitude terrain of eastern Sikkim, a region not just dangerous due to enemy threats, but brutal because of its deadly weather and unforgiving isolation. It was 1968. The monsoon had arrived with its full fury, drenching everything in cold sheets of rain, and reducing visibility to near zero. The mountains were treacherous. On October 4th, Harbhajan was escorting a mule convoy through one of the narrow, slippery mountain trails when disaster struck. He slipped, fell into a fast-moving glacier stream and was swept away. Search parties were launched immediately. Soldiers combed the cliffs and ravines, but day after day passed, and there was no sign of him. 3 days later, his body was found downstream, his uniform still intact, eyes closed but peaceful. His death was tragic, but what came next would turn his legacy into legend. A few nights after his funeral, soldiers from his unit began having strange dreams. In those dreams, Harbhajan appeared, calm, composed, and in uniform. He told them he hadn't gone anywhere, that he was still on duty, that he was watching over the border, and he gave them warnings about enemy movements, border intrusions, weather hazards. At first, the men kept it to themselves, but then the dreams became too consistent, too accurate. Reports came in that patrol units were avoiding ambushes based on intuition or sudden orders they claimed came from Baba himself. Soldiers claimed to see him walking the base at night, inspecting posts. Some reported boots moving on their own, doors opening and closing, beds mysteriously made. Others swore they'd been touched on the shoulder only to turn and find no one there, but a trail of damp footprints leading away. It didn't take long for the army to pay attention. When messages came to commanders through dreams or visions and turned out to be true, even skeptics started to believe, and so began a tradition that continues to this day. The Indian Army officially acknowledges Harbhajan Singh's presence as a guardian spirit. They maintain a shrine for him, Baba Mandir, perched at 13,000 feet above sea level, near the Nathula Pass. A full-time caretaker is assigned to maintain his room. His bed is neatly made every morning. His boots are polished daily. Clean clothes are laid out for him. and strangely by the next day, they appear to have been worn. Every morning, soldiers place a toothbrush with toothpaste, a bar of soap, a pressed uniform, and shining boots beside his bed. And every evening, the caretakers find the bed creased, the soap wet, the boots dusted with footprints. No one is allowed to sleep in his bed, and it's said that any soldier who dares will fall ill or suffer misfortune. But perhaps the most extraordinary part of this story happens once a year. On the anniversary of his death, the army organizes a ceremonial trip for Baba Harbhajan Singh. With full military honors, his belongings are packed into a jeep and escorted from Sikkim to his hometown in Punjab. A seat on the train is reserved in his name. He's even issued a valid railway ticket. Soldiers travel with his gear, and during the journey, many report strange occurrences, luggage shifting on its own, dreams of him offering guidance, cold air brushing past them while the train moves through the plains. It's not superstition, it's tradition. Indian soldiers, tough as they come, bow respectfully at his shrine before heading to the front lines. Even the Chinese People's Liberation Army, positioned on the other side of the border, is aware of the ghost soldier. It's said that during flag meetings between Indian and Chinese officers at Nathula, the Chinese would sometimes set out an extra chair for Baba. To them, he's not a ghost, he's a presence. There's something deeply comforting about it, about knowing someone who gave his life for his country is still watching over those who follow in his footsteps. Whether one believes in spirits or not, it's impossible to deny the impact Baba has had on generations of soldiers. Many claim that he saved their lives. Some say they've heard his voice in moments of despair. Others simply feel a kind of peace in his shrine, a calm that doesn't exist anywhere else in that hostile landscape. But what really gives this story its power is the sincerity in the eyes of the men who tell it. They don't speak of Baba with fear. They speak of him with reverence, not as a ghost, not as a legend, but as a fellow soldier. Still serving, still protecting, still loyal. Even in death, Harbhajan Singh kept his post. His soul, they say, refused to retire. In a world where spirits often bring chills and curses, Baba Harbhajan Singh is something different. He's a guardian, a silent watcher in the mountains, a reminder that duty, when born of sacrifice, doesn't always end with the last breath. Sometimes, it marches on, forever. The First World War was hell on earth. Trenches soaked in blood and rain, the air thick with gas, mud swallowing boots whole, and death always waiting quiet, patient. Amid this chaos, among the thousands of young men sent to the front lines, was Private Rex Cook, a soldier of the Canadian Expeditionary Force. His death, though tragic, was not what made him a legend. It was what happened after he died that soldiers never forgot. It was the fall of 1915, near the infamous Belgian town of Ypres. The front was wet, cold, and crawling with death. A Canadian battalion had just rotated into the line, taking over a shell-ravaged sector that reeked of rot and hopelessness. Among the officers was a young lieutenant, barely in his 20s. He'd only recently arrived at the front, green and full of the sort of quiet dread that clings to every man during his first few weeks at war. One morning, after a night of shelling and no sleep, the lieutenant was trudging along a muddy trench when he saw a figure crouched near a collapsed dugout. It was a soldier, muddy from head to toe, but alert, scanning the distance, as if expecting movement. The officer approached. "Are you on sentry duty?" he asked. The man stood up, young, pale. His uniform was torn, but neat. He looked up, saluted sharply, and nodded. The lieutenant noticed the soldier's face, strikingly familiar, though he couldn't place where he'd seen him. The name tag was smudged, but he thought he made out the name, Cook. "Private Cook, isn't it?" he asked. The soldier didn't respond, just looked at him for a moment, with an expression the officer would later describe as too calm, unbothered by the surrounding horror. And then, without a word, the soldier turned and walked off, disappearing behind a collapsed sandbag wall. The lieutenant was left unsettled. Something about the whole exchange felt wrong. He chalked it up to exhaustion. But later that afternoon, during a meal, He mentioned the odd encounter to one of the sergeants. The sergeant froze. "Private Cook?" he asked. "You sure that was the name?" "Yes, why?" The sergeant's face darkened. "Sir, Private Rex Cook was killed 3 days ago. Sniper caught him while he was on watch. He's buried back near the tree line. Third grave on the left." The officer laughed nervously. Thought it was a joke, but the sergeant wasn't smiling. Later that day, out of curiosity and a creeping sense of dread, he made his way to the rear area, to the graves, and there it was. A simple wooden cross. Private Rex Cook, CEF, killed in action, October 10th, 1915. The same face, the same eyes, the same soldier he'd spoken to that morning. For the rest of the day, the officer said nothing. He didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Cook's calm expression, not lifeless, but distant. Like someone watching from far away, like someone no longer fully part of the living world. Over the following days, rumors began to spread among the men. One soldier swore he saw a figure move through the fog just before a shell landed, giving him enough time to take cover. Another claimed a man in a torn uniform pulled him out of the mud during a gas attack, and vanished when he turned to thank him. All described the same man, young, pale, silent, wearing the badge of a Canadian private, always appearing out of nowhere, always gone before anyone could speak more than a few words. Eventually, word reached the chaplain, who held a quiet prayer service near Cook's grave. Soldiers attended in silence, eyes on the ground, hands shaking not from cold but from fear, or perhaps awe. It wasn't just that they believed Cook was still among them, it was that they didn't feel threatened. They felt protected. One soldier wrote in his diary, "I don't know if I believe in spirits, but if someone is watching out for us, I hope it's him. I hope it's Cook." After the war, the lieutenant, now a decorated veteran, shared the story during a reunion in Ottawa. A reporter overheard and wrote a short piece in the local paper, calling it Canada's Guardian Ghost. The legend spread quietly, not in the pages of history books, but through personal letters, bar conversations, and family stories told around fireplaces. Years later, in World War II, Canadian troops fighting in Europe reported seeing a similar figure, a quiet soldier who appeared in times of danger, always out of place, always walking away before anyone could truly catch up to him. Some said it was just a myth, recycled to lift spirits in dark times. But a few, those who'd fought on the front lines, who knew the smell of death, and the sound of mortar in the distance, believed it was him. Still watching, still serving. Today, Private Rex Cook is remembered not just as a fallen soldier, but as something more, a symbol, a guardian. A reminder that bravery doesn't always end with the last breath, that some bonds, those forged in mud, blood, and brotherhood, are stronger than death. His grave still stands, marked and honored. But those who know the story, they'll tell you he's never truly there. Because sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls in, and the world grows quiet, a lone figure in a tattered uniform appears, watching from a distance, silent, calm, a Canadian soldier, and if you ever meet him, don't be afraid, it's just Rex Cook, still on duty.
If you liked the video, don't forget to like and share. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this.